Chris McConnell. Mark Wemkin.
Roto Bros signal confirmed.
I'm still upset about where Terry McLaurin is going. I'm still upset about his ADP at wide receiver. But that's okay because I've got some help today to talk me through it, to heal me from a little bit of this Terry McLaurin PTSD of for his ADP. I've got Addison Hayes joining me in the mind of McConnell today. Addison, what's going on, man? It's good to have you on. We've been trying to do this, a little collaboration with the Roto Bros for a while now, and unfortunately, my amazing partner Mark can't be here. He's at a wedding this weekend, but nonetheless, you're with me, and we're gonna have a good time, man.
Yeah, dude. Thank you so much for asking me to come on here. I'm super excited. I know, like you said, we've been trying to link up and do this for a while now, and we're here. We're ready to go. I think we got some an awesome show here ready that you have planned for us, and some amazing players and such to talk about that I'm super excited to get into. Absolutely,
and of course, look. Who hasn't heard of Addison Hayes, right? But in case you've been living under a rock, Addison Hayes from Dynasty League Football, he's going to be kicking back and joining us today. Addison, so you guys have you do a lot of stuff for the Dynasty League Football YouTube channel. Before we jump into what we got planned today, go ahead and kind of explain to everybody listening what Dynasty League Football is all about, the website, the YouTube channel, which you are pretty much exclusive to. Go ahead and tell us about that. What you guys got going on over there?
Yeah, I mean, dynastyleaguefootball.com. That's the main website. That's been basically one of the biggest, if not the biggest, dynasty website for fantasy football over the past decade or so. So I've been very privileged to be a part of DLF and that amazing group of analysts and the community and stuff that they've built. And then from that, I have then taken and kind of started to grow a little bit of a DLF community over on YouTube, which has been my main focus for basically the past, 5 or 6 months or so since the beginning of draft season this year. So over at DLF's YouTube channel, we drop content Monday through Friday every single week, sometimes Saturday and Sunday as well, depending on how much content we actually have. So we're continuing to do that throughout the rest of the summer. And then we've been planning out our in-season content, which I'm very excited for. So we're just going to continue rolling on with YouTube channel content as well as written content from the amazing DLF team on dynastyleaguefootball.com.
Awesome stuff, man. Yeah, you guys definitely check that out. I've checked out a lot of y'all's videos and content you guys have going on, and definitely some of the best stuff in the industry, especially from a dynasty standpoint as well. Also, guys, remember you can join the Roto Bros Fantasy Advice Lounge. It is the best hidden gem in all of fantasy. Check it out. Go to patreon.com/Roto Bros. We've got a silver tier, we've got a gold tier, $2, $5. Pick your poison. Both tiers get you access into the Roto Bros Fantasy Lounge. It is a 24/7, 365 operation. We have a channel for everything: best ball, DFS, redraft in football, baseball, and basketball. We have news channels. We have a channel dedicated to just normal talk about whatever you want. Talk about beer, whatever you want. We have a lot of stuff going on there. So it is a blast. We've got a great community over there. So again, check that out, patreon.com/Roto Bros. And again, with the gold membership, you get a lot of great bonuses. You get my NFL scouting briefs in the spring, great for dynasty leagues, great to learn a little bit more about the rookies, what they did in college, how that's going to translate in the NFL. You get Mark's snaps and targets report and the weekly DFS podcast that Mark and Joe do as well. So definitely check that out. Again, that's patreon.com/Roto Bros. Addison. Okay, look, there's a lot of hype going on. Obviously, season's right around the corner. Training camp's going to be starting soon. And so there's a lot of hype with a lot of players. And we know that, of course, there's going to be some injuries that happen in, training camp. And that's just going to drive hype for other players as well. Someone's going to go down. That's going to create a vacuum of targets for another player or a vacuum of carries for another player, etc. But there's a lot of hype surrounding a certain list of players, and I've sort of jotted several of them down. And I want to get your opinion here on a lot of these players. Are you trusting the hype? Because some of these I am, some of these I'm not. And a lot of people know kind of how I feel about some of these guys. A lot of these guys we've covered in detail. So I want to get your opinion to see how you feel on a lot of these guys. I don't know if there is a player in fantasy that is being hyped up as much as Kyle Pitts. Now, obviously, I'm a Falcons fan. Okay, I like Kyle Pitts. I mean, I love Kyle Pitts. Okay, I'll be completely honest, but I try not, whenever I'm doing, analyzing fantasy or scouting rookies or anything like that, I'm not allowing my bias to come into it. Like, I'm not saying, I'm a Falcons fan, so I'm not going to own a Saints player in Alvin Kamara or something like that. You're not going to win anything when you play that way. But so I try to leave all this bias out of it. But when you have a player taken 4th overall with the tight end profile of a guy like Kyle Pitts, it's kind of hard to ignore. But again, a lot of people, we know tight end is one of the hardest positions for rookies, rookie tight ends out of college coming into the NFL to really make an instant impact at. So Kyle Pitts, to me, I think can be a game changer from day one. Do you think the same, or are you kind of taking a little more cautious approach with Kyle Pitts?
Well, let me tell you, Chris, and especially because I know who I'm talking to. I know that I'm talking to a Falcons fan, but I've been on record with saying that I think Kyle Pitts has the best opportunity to lead all rookie pass catchers in yards and fantasy points in 2021. I honestly believe that. And if he doesn't, and it's Jamar Chase, then I think Kyle Pitts can be right behind him. Because you basically have a situation where he's coming into an offense that already throws 600 plus times every single year for like the past decade with Matt Ryan. Julio Jones is gone. I think Kyle Pitts can come in and be a direct Julio Jones replacement, because even though, yes, he's a tight end, we need to stop classifying him as a tight end, because he's not really. He's like 6'5", runs a 4.4, 40-yard dash. He played primarily on the outside at Florida. So that's where he's going to play in Atlanta. I think he's going to be more so the wide receiver 2 across from Calvin Ridley. I think that also allows them to actually play their more traditional tight end as well, and Hayden Hurst on the field at the same time. And so I honestly think that Kyle Pitts can come in here, like you said, day one, and be a game changer for the Falcons and for fantasy football. And I would not be surprised if by the end of the year, we're talking about Kyle Pitts as a 70 for 1,000 and 7, 8, 9 touchdowns type of a player, which would make him, at the tight end position that we're playing him at for fantasy football, a top 3 fantasy player, and a guy who can, help break your league like Travis Kelce, like Darren Waller. He could be that in year one. I really believe that.
Finally, there's some hope for humanity. Somebody who actually says everything that I have been saying for the last 2 or 3 months since he was drafted, even before he was drafted, because it didn't really matter where Kyle Pitts was drafted. It just so happened he got drafted into a situation with an offensive mind in Arthur Smith that utilizes the tight end position. They just traded Julio to Tennessee, so you've got this vacuum of targets that's available for a guy like Kyle Pitts. And look, I live in Georgia, Addison. Okay, so I am in arguably the biggest hotbed for college football talent in the entire country. A lot of people say Texas, a lot of people say California. Let me tell you, there is not a hotbed scorching more than Georgia. Okay, so I'm all over this college football landscape. We have never seen, and I've been saying it for months, we have never seen a tight end prospect like Kyle Pitts. Everybody wants to say, well, he's the best tight end prospect since Vernon Davis. Well, yeah, that's true, but he's better than Vernon Davis. He's 3 inches taller than Vernon Davis. He's faster than Vernon Davis. Like, Vernon Davis was a great prospect. We have never in the history of the NFL seen a tight end prospect coming out of college that fits the bill like Kyle Pitts does. And the thing about Kyle Pitts is, again, he's coming into this great situation. It's not like he's coming in and playing with a rookie quarterback in Zach Wilson. Like, it's not like he's playing for the Jets, right? It's not like he's playing for the Falcons, where he's immediately going to be, at worst, the second leading receiver on the team. And notice I said receiver, because what Addison just said, you can't really treat him as a tight end. You can't just say, oh, Kyle is going to be, rookie tight ends have a tough time adjusting to the NFL. But he's not a tight end. He's not. Like, he is he's essentially a bona fide receiver. And I've said it on every single time I talk about Kyle Pitts. I say he's Calvin Johnson playing the tight end position. Imagine Megatron in Detroit playing the tight end position. What a mismatch that would be, much less the mismatch it already was at wide receiver. So this is a guy that is probably not even going to be covered by the top cornerback every week, because that's probably going to go to Calvin Ridley, right? So he is going to be mismatched all over the place, and he is going to be working the middle of that field like nobody's business. This is going to be a guy who I completely agree with you. He has a ceiling to be the tight end year one in fantasy, and the ability to lead all rookies in all of those categories that you mentioned. Look, he's my tight end 4 right now. And I have him only behind Travis Kelce, Darren Waller, Travis Kelce, TJ Hawkinson at 2, Darren Waller at 3, and then I have Kyle Pitts. I have him ahead of George Kittle. The only reason I have Waller and Hawkinson there is the immense amount of targets and opportunity. There's nobody else that Darren and TJ have to worry about. Right. Kyle does have, Russell Gage is a good third receiver. Kyle does have to worry about, obviously, Calvin Ridley being the number one guy. TJ and Darren are the number one guys, right? So they're going to be peppered with targets. That's the only reason that Kyle's behind them. So I'm with you. Like, the sky is the limit for Kyle, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a guy, even if he's not getting like heavily targeted, like, Darren Waller had like 150, Kelce had 150. I think TJ Hawkinson could realistically have 150 targets. If Kyle Pitts is like a 110 to 120 type of guy, he's still going to be in that 60 to 75 reception range. And with his yards per reception, his ability to, have an immense number of yards after catch. And I think also the fact that, the Falcons is going to be an air yards type of offense. Calvin Ridley was one of the top wide receivers in air yards last year. I think Kyle Pitts can just do the same thing with Ridley on the other side. We're talking about a guy who could be like a Mike Evans or a Kenny Golladay type of stat line at the wide receiver position, but you're able to play him at tight end. I actually, funny enough, I made a YouTube short on DLF's YouTube channel, literally talking about why I love Kyle Pitts in year one. If you look at what Julio Jones did last year, right? In 9 games, he totaled 900 yards, and I already forget the stat line already. I'm sure you already know. But he basically had the tight end equivalent to the tight end 12 overall season in 9 games, Julio Jones last year. And that was with Calvin Ridley. That's with Russell Gage doing his whole bananas thing that he did at the end of the year. He was the tight end 12, Julio Jones was last year. But that was only 3 points, 3 total points behind the tight end 8. So it was basically, if you say that he's a tight end 8, just off of what Julio Jones did last year. Again, 9 games, 16 fantasy points per game. That was equivalent to the tight end 3 last year, behind only Travis Kelce and Darren Waller. And that was ahead of George Kittle in the games that George Kittle played last year too. So it's funny how people are like, well, in order to justify having Kyle Pitts as your tight end 3 or 4, or justify taking him in the 4th round of redraft leagues this year, you're basically saying that he needs to be the best tight end prospect and have the best rookie tight end season of all time, which was, back just since 2000. It was either Evan Ingram in 2017 or Jeremy Shockey back in the early 2000s. Both those guys only had like 700 yards or something like that. They weren't even top 5 tight ends. So they're like, oh, you can't do that because you're basically projecting him to have the best tight end season of all time. And I'm like, well, yeah, I kind of am, because again, he's not a tight end. He is going to be played and utilized by the Falcons as a wide receiver. We're just going to have the benefit of being able to play him at the tight end position. And it's like if Jimmy Graham was not a tight end with the New Orleans Saints back in the early 2010s. He was not. If you look at his alignment and where he was outside every single time they played him. So he is a wide receiver. And again, we just have the benefit in fantasy football of calling him and playing him a tight end. So utilize that to your advantage and just, draft him and slot him in as your tight end and be really, really happy with it.
Exactly. And a lot of people are, what I talk about this all the time. And, a lot of people know I also do some writing for the Fantasy Football Black Book. And in the Black Book, one of the things that we tell people and preach about all the time, and Joe Pisapia is a good friend of mine, and he's the main author of that book. But one of the things that we talk about in the philosophy of the Black Book is positional advantage. People forget about that. It's positional advantage. And a lot of people, it's the reason why in redraft leagues, I want to draft from the 10 to 12 spot every single year. And I want to start every draft off, super flex or not. I want to start every draft off with 2 workhorse running backs that I don't have to worry about. I want a guy like Zeke or Eckler or Najee, and those are the 3. I'm getting a combo of those 2 in every single redraft league that I can this year, because those are 3 guys that are going to have a monumental amount of touches, and their backups are way less than stellar. So the reason I say that is because we talk about it all the time. RB1 is a position in and of itself. Running back's not the position. RB1 is the position. So if I can have 2 guys that are right off the bat that immediately either match me or give me a positional advantage at the running back position over the vast majority of my league mates, then yeah, I want that, because that's a positional advantage I have over my league mates every single week for the most part. At tight end, it's even more so, because there's only it's less. Like there's less guys there. And I think this year that Kittle's not even one of those guys, because Ayuk has turned into has sort of flourished as an obviously a good option for that offense in Kyle Shanahan's system. They added another running back in Trey Sermon, so they may actually run the ball a little bit more this year. And of course, Deebo Samuel has flourished himself. So when George Kittle was doing his thing, Addison, he was the guy. Like, that was it, and he wasn't struggling with injuries. So now he's struggling with injuries, and he has guys around him. Waller doesn't have that. TJ Hawkinson doesn't have that. And it doesn't look like Kyle Pitts is going to have that. And of course, Kelsey just doesn't freaking matter. Like, he's just going to do whatever he wants to do anyway. So that's 4 guys that, to me, you're going to have a position. If you draft Kyle Pitts, you are going to have a positional advantage at the tight end position, especially in one tight end leagues. You're going to have a positional advantage at that position over the other 8 to 9 owners in your league. That's huge. Right? Like, that's huge, especially if you play in a league where you play every other owner in your league during the season. So it's one of the things I stress. So not only that, but you mentioned him playing at the tight end position. Right. He's not going to be utilized as a tight end. Are we going to see him lined up in line in like the Rob Gronkowski role? Sure. He'll be close to the tackle, but the problem is he's not going to stay there. Okay. Because he's not the best blocker in the world, right? Like, he's not the best all-around tight end in the NFL. That's not what we're saying. Okay, but that's what tight end coaches are for. That's what positional coaches are for. They're going to teach him how to become a better blocker, but his MO is going to be catching passes. He was drafted to be a playmaker for this offense. And so we're going to see him lined up in line, but he's going to be running routes from in line. And when we see him split out wide, like you said, he's going to be running routes. He's going to be a route runner. He's not going to be sitting there like you mentioned Hayden Hurst is and be used as a blocker, or Jacob Tamme as a primary blocker. We're not going to see that very often. So we're in total agreement. I think that the sky is the limit for him, and there's just so many targets available for him. And the fact, there would be an argument where if somebody said, well, who's their number 1 wide receiver? They don't have one. Like, let's say he played for the Jets. Well, he's going to get a lot of targets, but he'll just be the number 1 option that defenses are going to focus on. You can't do that with Atlanta, because now you're leaving Calvin Ridley wide open. So you've got to sort of pick your poison. Which is
going to happen anyway, but
exactly.
I love Ridley.
Exactly. Those are 2 guys that are just not going to be stopped. And so, I don't think there is a cornerback in the league. I don't think there's a single cornerback in the league, aside from a guy built like Jalen Ramsey, who is long, fast, lanky, that would be able to shut down Kyle Pitts. Outside of him, I don't care who you put on him. You're not stopping him. So, and not only that, but in the red zone. So I see like a 900-yard, 9 to 10 touchdown season out of Kyle Pitts in year 1. So that ceiling to me is there.
Oh, I mean, that absolutely is. And I think the final point that I can mention, just to kind of go off of a little bit what you were talking about in terms of your redraft and how you're drafting, I'm in total agreement. First 2 rounds is 100% running back. It's running back, because that's how the ADP is, but it also allows you then, and if you look at how ADP and how drafts are actually going and do a mock draft, wide receivers outside of like Tyreek Hill and, AJ Brown, Justin Jefferson, these guys are all, second or third round picks, some of them first round, but you're taking running back. All these other wide receivers are in the 3 through 5 or 6 range that you can grab. Like you can grab Michael Thomas, you can grab Allen Robinson, you can grab Keenan Allen. All these guys are 3rd, 4th, 5th round picks. But if you just replace one of them with Kyle Pitts, and we're saying that he has a realistic top 3, if not better, tight end 1 overall type upside in year 1. If you look at how the other tight ends are being drafted, Travis Kelce is a consensus first round pick right now. Darren Waller is a consensus second round pick. George Kittle is probably in that 2-3 range as well. I've seen him go a lot at that 2-3 turn to whoever's drafting 101, 102. But Kyle Pitts is just kind of chilling there with TJ Hawkinson and Mark Andrews in that 4 or 5 round, range. And I think that you could realistically start your draft off with, like you said, like a 2 workhorse running backs in Zeke, Austin Eckler, Najee Harris. You can even take the shot on like a Joe Mixon, or maybe you got lucky and you got, Derrick Henry or Saquon Barkley at like 105 or 106, and you got another running back in the second round like Austin Eckler. Third round, you take your wide receiver 1, you take Keenan Allen, you take Allen Robinson. 4th round, you get Kyle Pitts. 5th round, you get like Deontay Johnson. Like that, like you're chilling there with 5 fantastic players.
What's to be upset about with a start like that? You know what I mean? Like, so you're telling me I have a positional advantage now at 2 different positions, at running back and tight end already. What's not to love? And you mentioned, and I want to go back to this because you mentioned
didn't sacrifice wide receiver either. Like that start, you have Keenan Allen, and you can replace Deontay with whoever you want, but like you still have your wide receiver 1 alpha and your positional advantage at running back and tight end. Like you said, you're not sacrificing anything else.
Right, exactly. And look, there were 6 tight ends last year in fantasy that scored 107 in PPR, that scored 170 or more points. Obviously, Travis Kelce was at 312, significantly higher than everybody else. You had he and Darren Waller were just in a class of their own at 278. Logan Thomas, Robert Tonyan, TJ Hawkinson, and Mark Andrews. The 4 of them were in the 170 range, 170 to 176. Okay, so last year, had you drafted one of those guys, now had you drafted, Travis Kelce, you drafted the tight end, or you drafted the wide receiver 4 at the tight end position. That's how much of a positional advantage. That's why it's important to get a guy like Travis Kelce early. But if you drafted any of those guys, like you were drafting, some solid wide receivers essentially. So it's to me, and if we're talking about ceiling, with Logan Thomas was tight end 3. Whose ceiling's higher, Kyle Pitts or Logan Thomas? Right. So, I mean, if Kyle Pitts finishes as tight end 3 behind guys like Waller and Kelce, I mean, you're looking at a borderline wide receiver 1 season. So I can't stress enough how, and I totally get people being like, okay, well, tight end, of course, you got to be careful because, tight ends come in and like we thought Gesicki was going to be a monster, and, he's still trying to break out in going into his 4th year. And it's like, okay, I get that. I understand the concern, but he's not going to be treated like a tight end number 1. And he's a tight end in name only. And he's a bona fide wide receiver. So, and he's the greatest tight end prospect of all time. So you can't really treat him like you would a guy like Mike Gesicki. You know what I mean? It's, we watched Space Jam last night. Me and a few of we watched Space Jam. And a buddy of mine, he says he liked it. I liked it a lot more. I think as a kid's movie, it's like 7, 8 of 10. And he says, Chris, it's not, anywhere close to that. And I said, Kevin, you can't rate Space Jam the same way you would rate Shawshank Redemption. It's a kid's movie, right? Like you can't judge something the same way you would judge something that's completely different, right? So you can't, if Kyle Pitts is completely different from a guy like Mike Gesicki, you can't compare the two and you treat them the same. They have to be treated differently. So, look, we're on board with Kyle Pitts. Pants off for Kyle Pitts in 2021. I think that much is clear. And one of our patrons, Aaron, he is going to be ecstatic to hear about that because he's right there with us with Kyle Pitts. Now, let me ask you this. Another guy that's recently, over the last couple weeks, that has started to get a lot of hype. And I'm kind of confused why, but I want to know where you're at on this. And I don't know if you had maybe seen on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, where I had kind of gone off on a little bit of a tangent on this guy the other day. But Rashad Bateman, I love the talent, hate the situation. Okay. And, but for some reason, he is starting to get a lot of hype put around him. Like, he's getting drafted, obviously, in the second round of rookie drafts. Okay, that's just where his ADP is. So he's getting drafted with the likes of Rondale Moore, Jalen Waddle, Terrace Marshall, Amari Rodgers, guys of that nature at the wide receiver position. But Rashad Bateman, to me, I don't see it. If he had gotten drafted to the Jets, now we're talking. I'm all in. Buckle up. It's the Ravens. It's a Ravens wide receiver. Are you as perplexed as I am, or are you like pounding the table for this guy?
So you did not watch my YouTube video on Rashad Bateman, is what I'm hearing from this.
Apparently I did not, but as soon as this show's over, I'm going to watch it. As soon as it's over, now that I know, I'm going to go watch it. I'm going to preface this that I'm not really in on Rashad Bateman for 2021. I think that there is a messy situation there with the Baltimore Ravens in terms of pass catchers. Just, obviously they still have Hollywood Brown and Mark Andrews there. They added Sammy Watkins in free agency. Yeah, gross, but Sammy Watkins can still be a pretty solid role-playing wide receiver. Rashad Bateman comes in as the first-round pick for the Baltimore Ravens. Then they also drafted another receiver in the fourth round, Tylan Wallace. So there's a whole bunch of that going on. On top of the fact that the Baltimore Ravens only throw about 450 times a year. So that's a really messy situation. So I don't like Rashad Bateman for 2021. What I do like Rashad Bateman for is from a dynasty perspective. I like Rashad Bateman long-term. I like his potential upside in this Baltimore Ravens offense. I think this is the best wide receiver that Lamar Jackson has played with since probably high school. I don't know. I don't think he had any really good wide receivers at Louisville. Obviously, in his time with the Baltimore Ravens over the past couple of years, he hasn't had any wide receivers. I don't really think Hollywood Brown is that good. He's a one-trick pony, and he can't do what Rashad Bateman can do. So I think that is a very important positive for Rashad Bateman. I also think that what a lot of the offseason has told us in this Baltimore Ravens offense and what they want to do is they want to throw more, but they still want to be efficient with throwing the ball. I think that they are still going to be obviously a run-first team, but they're not going to have only 400 pass attempts. Last year, they had 405 pass attempts, which was a team low since 2010, and probably even beyond that as well. And then naturally, when you look at teams that already throw under 450 times in a year, and you look at their pass attempts in N+1 year, that naturally grows about 50 pass attempts from year end to year N+1. So if we're adding 50 pass attempts to the Baltimore Ravens from last year to this year, that's pretty solid in terms of just a little bit more opportunity for everyone there involved. So I think that moving on, we can probably expect, and what I do expect is the Ravens to be a little bit more balanced, still obviously very run first, because obviously when you have Lamar Jackson, you're going to be run first. When you have J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, you're going to be run first. But they want to be better with passing the ball, and they want to pass a little bit more. So I think that we're going to be looking more as a 475 pass attempt kind of team, just on average moving forward. Sammy Watkins is a free agent next year. They can probably just move on from him. And then Rashad Bateman can take over as the alpha wide receiver for this team, like he did with Minnesota in only 5 games last year in 2020, and still with Tyler Johnson at Minnesota in 2019 was phenomenal. So I really, really like Rashad Bateman. I liked him a lot coming out of college. He was my wide receiver 2. He's still my wide receiver 2 post-draft, just because of the dynasty prospect of him and what I really like moving forward.
A lot of people want to talk about Greg Roman and blah, blah, blah in that offense. But if you look at Greg Roman's history, I will point you to his time with the San Francisco 49ers in the early 2010s. He had a quarterback named Colin Kaepernick, who was also very run first, maybe not the best passing quarterback. But with that quarterback and in the Greg Roman offensive system, he had guys like Michael Crabtree, who was still a top 15 wide receiver, top 18 wide receiver in a couple of years. He had other wide receivers as well, like Anquan Bolden. They did very successfully in terms of fantasy football as top 20 wide receivers in a Greg Roman system with, Colin Kaepernick. And I think they also had Alex Smith at that time with the San Francisco 49ers. So there is potential and there is upside here. I think that he can be a very consistent wide receiver, Rashad Bateman. And I think that he comps pretty well to Michael Crabtree and Anquan Bolden in terms of how they won and how they were able to be successful, just in terms of beating defenses and actual production at the end of the year. So it might take a year or two, 2022, 2023, but I do like Rashad Bateman, just not as much for this year.
Yeah. Okay. And so I'm with you. So we were right there, just holding hands on Kyle Pitts. We're standing, about 6 feet apart now. COVID protocols on Rashad Bateman. Little bit further away on that. Now, again, I'll preface what I'm about to say here. Rashad to me is a great prospect, and he was, I believe, a top 5 receiver for me coming into the season. I didn't like him, as much as Terrace Marshall, and some other guys in front. But I did like Rashad Bateman, and I was really hoping that he would go to a situation, and I'm always hoping that guys, of course, that I like are going to a situation that is going to benefit them from a fantasy standpoint, right? So I was really hoping that he would go to a better place, but I didn't like him more than Jamar and Devontae and even Jalen Waddle or Terrace Marshall. But he was top 5, top 6 for me coming in as a rookie wide receiver before the draft. After the draft, he dropped significantly for me because then I was kind of looking at where his ADP is going to be at rookie drafts, where I'm going to have to get him. This is my biggest not my biggest problem. One of my biggest problems, other than his situation, is who is going, or I like to ask the question, who and why. I like to ask those questions. Can I choose to draft a guy like Rashad Bateman with so much uncertainty, with so many things that I feel have to go his way in a situation that I don't feel has great odds to go his way in order for this to pan out? Can I justify taking him over a guy that I like significantly more in a significantly more friendly offense for wide receiver production than Terrace Marshall? What about Amari Rodgers? Can I justify that? And when I ask myself those questions, I can't. Now I'll take him over Rondale Moore. Like I'm off on Rondale Moore in so many different directions. I can't even, but I've gone on that tangent with Mark before a few episodes ago. But there are a couple guys that I even like past the second round that I like for the future, other than Rashad Bateman, kind of like Nico Collins. But obviously you could get both of those guys. Right. So Nico's not going to be an issue in the second round. You're not, this ADP, you're not opting for him. You're not overdrafting him. But the guys that he's going around that I like better than him, clearly, Elijah Moore, another guy I forgot about. Can I justify taking Rashad Bateman over Elijah and Terrace and Amari? I just don't think that I can. Not in a situation in an offense where they're not going to throw that much. They were 24th in the league last year in pass attempts. Okay, where Lamar Jackson was 24th in the league at quarterback in pass attempts last year. Marquise Brown was wide receiver 36, not even a wide receiver 2. So let's say, look, I agree. Rashad Bateman is a much better wide receiver than Marquise Brown. But are they going to throw enough to where Rashad is going to be able to finish, wide receiver, if Brown's 36, wide receiver 29 or 26, am I comfortable with that? And I just don't know that I am. Now, of course, injuries are going to happen. That's going to move some things around for people. But I just don't know if I can invest in that when guys like Elijah and Terrace and Amari are on the board in situations that are significantly better, in my opinion, than what Rashod's got to deal with.
I think it's gross that you keep bringing up Amari Rodgers' name with Rashad Bateman.
Hey, do we really think that Alan Lazard and MVS are going to hold down Amari Rodgers? Like, Rodgers to Rodgers has a good ring to it. Now, of course, if it's Love, I'm kind of a Jordan Love believer. I believe in him a little bit more than Mark does. But, so if it's Jordan Love, puts a little bit of cold water on Amari. But if it's Aaron Rodgers, please, I'm all over Amari Rodgers.
Yeah, I just have a hard time believing in the situation over talent kind of thing that we've got going on here with Amari Rodgers specifically. I feel Terrace Marshall, I really like Terrace Marshall pre-draft as well. I think we also have to wait a year on him just because he's kind of the wide receiver 3 right now. But Robbie Anderson is a free agent after this year, so he'll bump up to wide receiver 2, even though then he'll still be probably the 3rd target just because of Christian McCaffrey getting like 120 targets too. But that's all whatever. And then Sam Darnold, that's whatever. Rashad Bateman. So yeah, I mean, I truly believe that Rashad Bateman, that talent is going to ultimately win out in this one. And I'm not going to make the whole, like, we faded AJ Brown because of the Tennessee Titans and pass first kind of comparison. I don't really like that, with Rashad Bateman here. But I still do believe that the Ravens, even though they might be sub 500, like I said, that they can still be 550, 575, which can still get it done for 2 wide receivers whenever Sammy Watkins is done. I think Mark Andrews is just kind of this like touchdown dependent tight end. He's not going to be a high targeted tight end anymore, maybe 80, 90 targets. But I think that Rashad Bateman can get 120 targets, whenever it's him and Hollywood and Andrews. And at 120 targets, that's where Juju Smith-Schuster was last year. That's where, guys like DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson, like they were kind of in that range as well. So I think that, top 30 wide receiver as a floor is well within his range in the next 2 or 3 years. And like I said, that Greg Roman in his history with Michael Crabtree and Anquan Bolden, I think ultimately he can get up to, a top 20 wide receiver here in just a couple of years as well. So yeah, I really like Rashad Bateman. I'm trusting in the first round draft capital. I'm trusting in what the Baltimore Ravens have been telling us they want to do through their actions this whole entire offseason. And also Greg Roman has talked about it as well, that people might be surprised when we see like a slightly different offense with the Baltimore Ravens this year that we haven't seen before, because they needed Lamar to run because they didn't have anybody to throw to. Now they have people to throw to. So, that kind of changes things a little bit, in my opinion.
My other thing is, and you had briefly mentioned him, Sammy Watkins is there. Now, look, he never turned into the guy that we thought he was going to out of Clemson, as we thought he was going to be just a fantasy dynamo coming out of Clemson, number 1 wide receiver for the Bills. He had the opportunity. It never really panned out really anywhere for him, even in Kansas City as a solid wide receiver too that they could constantly rely on. So, but he's just another, and this is what I tell Mark all the time, because Mark's always like, this guy doesn't matter. This guy doesn't matter. And I'll give another example of this later on the show with another topic we're going to get to. But my point is, it's not like they brought in David Moore. Okay. Like the Panthers did. Like, I'm not worried about, when it comes to DJ Moore's target share, for example, David Moore, I'm not worried about. But when it comes to Rashad Bateman's target share, yeah, it's a guy like Sammy Watkins. That's just another body that you're going to have to compete for targets with. And so to me, that's another significant body that he's going to have to deal with. Now, if he was coming in, he was the only added pass catcher. And I don't know what the plan is with Tylan Wallace. Tylan Wallace could, easily usurp Marquise Brown, for targets. Who knows what they're going to use Marquise Brown for? Probably like a situational deep threat sort of thing. But do we really think? I believe, in my opinion, if I have to buy into Rashad Bateman, I also have to force myself to believe that this offense is essentially going to almost flip on its head and change for the most part, and start throwing significantly more than what they already did in order to appease this Rashad Bateman hype. Because again, adding Sammy Watkins into that wide receiver group, Sammy might play ahead of Marquise Brown from day one. So not only that, you have another first-round wide receiver in Hollywood Brown who also has to get on that target totem pole. And while Rashod may be number one on that totem pole or right behind, say a guy like Mark Andrews, like, I don't know. I just feel like there's just a lot of bodies for an offense, a lot of bodies that are going to command targets for an offense and a quarterback like Lamar Jackson. So it's hard for me to even buy into it in Dynasty when, again, there's guys like Elijah Moore going in the same range and Terrace Marshall going in that same range. But of course, I'm one of those Terrace Marshall guys that's like, I think he's going to be wide receiver 2 by like week 10. I think that's how good he is. We saw him perform while he was competing with targets with a solid college tight end in Thad Moss, obviously Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson as well, and a running game like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So as that third, fourth guy on the totem pole, like he was still performing. So he is an extremely talented football player. So I can't really talk myself into it. And it's a shame because, like I said, I love the prospect. I love him. The situation to me, and I agree with you on some points. Like sometimes the talent I think is, can win out, but there's just a lot, in my opinion, that's like between Rashad Bateman and him, like really breaking out and to have like fantasy significance. Do we really think he has the chance to be a wide receiver 1 in fantasy?
No, I
don't. Yeah. I think we'd have to agree on that. But there are some that agree that he's going to be, that he could be. And I think it was Matt Kelly for like Roto Underground who was kind of using and like Matt and I disagree on a lot, and so he was using like the RG3 example from when Pierre Garçon led the league in targets one year. And look, RG3 never ran the ball, okay, the way that the Ravens do. Okay, Lamar Jackson is running the ball 147, 176, and 159 times during his first 3 seasons in the league. RG3 wasn't coming close to that. And plus that Redskins defense was worse. They were having to throw a lot more to catch up. A different offensive system as well. So I don't think that was really the best example to sort of pump up Rashad Bateman. But look, I won't have many shares of Rashad Bateman in Dynasty, but for Rashad's sake, I would like to see him, sort of, prove me wrong, because I think it would be a lot of fun. Okay, so a couple other guys that I want to kind of get to before we move on to our last topic here. So Laviska Shenault, Jalen Hurts, Najee Harris, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So we won't spend too much time on these guys unless, of course, Addison, you want to. You steer the ship today, my man. We're revolving around you today. Where do you stand on Laviska Shenault? Are you buying into this hype that they're going to use him as this pure volume-based wide receiver?
Nope. No, I'm out on Laviska Shenault. I don't really like any of the Jaguars wide receivers, to be honest with you. I think DJ Chark is a bust. I think he's a one-year wonder. Andy Holloway talked about it on the Fantasy Footballers, and I really agreed with him that he's just kind of this one-year wonder type guy that Urban Meyer doesn't really like, and he's just kind of going to fizzle out. We're just going to like look back 5 years from now and be like, remember DJ Chark? He was really fun that one year. I picked him up off waivers. Viska, I wasn't in on Viska even coming out of college either. So this could still be just me holding on to my priors and what I thought about him last year. I don't buy into the volume thing. I think that he's kind of gadgety and, really inconsistent and up and down. And I'm ultimately my biggest concern with this Jaguars offense is Urban Meyer, because I really think that he's going to bring his college game into the NFL. And we've seen that not work in the past with a bunch of other, college coaches come to the NFL. And I really feel like he's trying to fit players into his mold, and he's trying to fit, squares into circle holes and stuff like that, and vice versa. And it's just, I don't think it's going to work. And I'm very, very scared that this is going to be a overhyped offense with a lot of people that we are really, really upset about for fantasy football. And I think Viska is going to do just be another part of that.
Yeah, and look, I want to tie myself to Trevor Lawrence if I can. I like DJ Chark, I think, more than you this year. I don't necessarily think he'll be a bust. I think he has the size and the speed and the athleticism and the alpha profile to really be, if Trevor Lawrence does, catch on quickly, which I think he's a generational talent at quarterback.
Sure.
I think DJ Chark could be in for a really good season. I think he has a ceiling for a solid, mid wide receiver one season. I don't think that's where he's going to end up, but I can see that as a ceiling. It almost wouldn't surprise me if that ended up happening in the next 2 years. However, I'm with you on Laviska Shenault. Like, we're right back. We're pretty much in agreement, like we were on Kyle Pitts earlier. I never liked Laviska Shenault coming out. He was a raw prospect coming out. He was not a great route runner coming out. He's built like a running back. He's like 6'1", 225. And so he was always kind of impressive, sort of in that gadgety role, sort of the end arounds and the direct snaps and things of that nature. And I'm with you. Like, where's his volume going to come from? They brought in Marvin Jones on a 2-year deal. He's got like $9 million guaranteed. And a lot of people forget, who's their offensive coordinator? Darrell Bevell. Who is essentially responsible for bringing Marvin Jones into this world and making him relevant? Darrell Bevell in Detroit. So Darrell Bevell brought him in because Darrell is familiar with Marvin Jones and believes in Marvin. They're going to use him. I think he will be their wide receiver 2 this year from a volume-based standpoint and probably fantasy-based standpoint as well. And I'm not buying into this Laviska Shenault. There are a lot of other guys at his ADP that I would rather have. And, Bevell is trying to, I think, coach speak us into believing that he wants to develop him as this pure receiver. And again, I just don't see, even if they do, where's the volume? You know what I mean? I think that offense is better off. I'm not talking fantasy here. Real life, they are better off leaving Laviska doing what he does best. Okay, direct snaps, and not that I want to take the ball out of the best player on the team's hands in Trevor Lawrence, but I want I want to use that weapon. I talk about it all the time. I don't like these gadgety players like a Tavon Austin or Laviska Shenault or a Kadarius Toney. I don't like those players in fantasy. They're just, the volume's never there. Real life, I want them on my team. And so, but again, where's the volume? You drafted Travis Etienne. Urban Meyer already said, he already admitted publicly, we wanted Kadarius Toney in the first round. He wanted that Percy Harvin-like player that he could use in that role like he did at Florida. He wanted that, and he didn't get him, but he got Travis Etienne. So they're going to use Travis, obviously as a heavy pass catcher, which is good for him. But again, that's just going to take volume away from Laviska Shenault and bringing Marvin Jones in. And it's like, where's it going to come from? And it's not only that, but it's a rookie quarterback, new system, first-year head coach on a team that's probably not going to be very good. There's just not a whole lot to like with Laviska Shenault. So I agree with you there. Jalen Hurts, though, there's a lot of hype now. And I'm going to be honest with you, from a fantasy standpoint, Addison, I'm buying. I'm not a big proponent of him in real life. I don't think he's going to be a great real life quarterback from a fantasy standpoint. Once they showed and proved that they are buying into Jalen, and by not drafting a quarterback or adding a quarterback in free agency that is an impact guy that you need to look out for, Joe Flacco's not doing anything. Come on. So to me, they're all in on Jalen Hurts, and they prove that by passing on quarterback for the most part in free agency, passing completely in the draft, and adding Devontae Smith as their first round pick. I'm all over Jalen in fantasy because this is going to be a bad football team with a bad defense that's going to throw a lot.
Yep. No, I'm with you there too. I also add in the fact that he is a major rushing quarterback as well.
Yes.
So that's just going to give you uber fantasy points, that Konami code type of a quarterback, and you can get him cheap, because I think there's a lot of people who definitely don't like Jalen Hurts and don't want him to be a thing. I think he has question marks a lot long-term for Dynasty, but for redraft 2021, I'm definitely in on Jalen Hurts because he has that rushing upside. He has 2 first-round wide receivers over the last 2 years. This is wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2. One of those guys being a Heisman-winning wide receiver that they just drafted, 10th overall, I think is fantastic. So like you said, they committed to him for 2021. He's got a better offense than what he did last year, got better weapons. He's still a rushing quarterback. And they also have, a new kind of offense that I think they can kind of tailor this offensive system and how they want to utilize Jalen Hurts and maximize his total production in 2021. And not to mention, I think that offensive line is going to be a little bit better as well too. They've tried to make a little bit of adjustments with that one too. So I definitely like Jalen Hurts for 2021.
Yeah, and you mentioned, the offensive line, like that's going to be a big thing. They've got some guys coming back as well, Lane Johnson included, I believe, and so they're going to be improved. Now, I don't think the defense is going to be good. I think Dallas is going to absolutely rip through that division with ease this year. The Giants, I think, are probably going to be competing with the Redskins for number 2. So I think the Eagles are going to be 4th in that division. I don't think they're going to be a very good football team in real life, but there's not going to be any short of fantasy points coming from Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith, and of course Dallas Goedert once Zach Ertz is gone. So, and I've said it before multiple times on this show, like this could absolutely be the fastest offense from top to bottom in the entire NFL with Hurts and Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert at tight end and Jalen Reagor. Like Rager's not an alpha, and maybe Devontae Smith isn't either. But we got to remember, neither Deshaun Jackson and Jeremy Maclin, way back when, neither one of them profiled as alphas either, and it both worked out for them. So I think Jalen Reagor obviously profiles more as a good wide receiver too. He could be solid as a wide receiver too. So this could be a very fast offense as well. It's going to kind of all, I think, hinge on this offensive line and the coaching and the play calling as well. And of course, first year play caller, I get it. First year coach. Play caller as a head coach, I get that. So we'll see what happens. But again, I'm with you. I'm all in on Jalen Hurts. So 2 more here on this hype topic. Najee Harris and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Now, you had mentioned the offensive line for the Eagles. That's the big reason for me that I'm buying into Clyde Edwards-Helaire this going into this season. And I think I've got him ranked as like RB13, finishing as RB13, I think, this year. And so I think he's going to have a much better year than last year. Offensive line wasn't great last year. We saw that in the Super Bowl when they got hit with injuries. They revamped this entire thing. So they signed Joe Thuney from the Patriots, a 5-year, $80 million deal, one of the best offensive linemen in the league last year. Austin Blythe comes over for the Rams. He's going to be playing center, replacing Kilgore. Kyle Long they added him, but he had a leg injury in the OTAs. We'll see how serious that is. And then, of course, Orlando Brown, the biggest addition, both figuratively and literally. He comes in. He can play both tackle spots. So they traded for him from the Ravens. So this is huge for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And as we all know, and as we are teaching people who are just coming into the fantasy world, running back stats, they're not. It's not running back stats. Like this is these are offensive lineman stats, right? So it's not. Zeke has fed off. Guys like Zeke have fed off these great offensive lines, and I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire could do the same thing this year. Are you buying him or buying into the hype with him on this great offense for the Chiefs?
Dude, I freaking love Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So I was on Clyde Edwards-Helaire last year as a rookie. I was one of those guys in Dynasty as well that was calling Clyde Edwards-Helaire top 5 Dynasty rookie, top 5 Dynasty running back in his rookie year last year with Jonathan Taylor. And then obviously that didn't really work out. But if you look at his actual game log last year, he was an RB1 before he got hurt in week 11. And that was with the addition of Le'Veon Bell halfway through the year. He was an RB1. And the funny thing about that too is I don't even think he was utilized to his maximum potential in the receiving game either. He was doing that on rush attempts. And so that I think that's all like insanely crazy. I love Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I love his price because everybody kind of hates on him because of all the massive expectations he had coming into last year as a rookie. Didn't live up to that. So now people are like kind of, fatigued on CEH. And he's actually, I think, either the 4th or if not the 5th cheapest rookie running back from last year after Jonathan Taylor, Cam Akers, Antonio Gibson, and even J.K. Dobbins, which I think is insane. I love Clyde Edwards-Helaire for his price. I think that he has RB1 potential, like top 10 running back potential. They're going to throw the ball more to him, I think, because they lost Sammy Watkins. They didn't replace him with anybody. I think he has a fantastic opportunity to be the 3rd target on this team behind Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. He's going to be the main workhorse in rush attempts. Le'Veon Bell is gone. Damian Williams is gone. It's him and Darrell Williams. So this is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I'm really ready for this because I think potentially we could have been 1 year too early on that breakout. from him last year. And so I think Andy Reid trusts him more because he's not a rookie. He has a whole other year under his belt, and another year, especially because of the whole COVID summer that we had last year. So I truly, truly believe that Clyde Edwards-Helaire can be a top 10 running back this year and is going to surprise, I think, a lot of people in fantasy, especially he's going to be fantastic at his current ADP.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all. And like I said, I've got him as my RB13 right now, finishing the season as RB13 right now behind, Antonio Gibson, DeAndre Swift, who I love, Nick Chubb, and of course the typical top, 10, top 9. I also have him behind Najee Harris. And Najee Harris, we mentioned offensive line, doesn't really have the offensive line that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to have. Okay. There's a lot of hype with Najee Harris, and we were all sitting there. The vast majority of the Dynasty fantasy community, obviously, I think it sounds like you and I, together, were like, to me, as soon as Clyde Edwards-Helaire was drafted, it's like, that's it. That's the pick. He's the 1-1 in rookie drafts. Now, I ended up changing that to Jonathan Taylor because of the overall talent and the great situation to boot as well. But still, Clyde Edwards-Helaire was a top 2 pick for me in rookie drafts that won QB leagues, of course. And so I just think that we kind of had that same feeling, at least I did, with Najee Harris. As soon as we saw, that's it. He's the guy. Because Benny Snell's not doing anything for me. He's not moving the needle. Neither is Anthony McFarland. This is Najee Harris's backfield, and as long as he stays healthy, he's getting 350 plus touches total in this season, and he might be able to do it with ease with an extra game this year. So this is a guy that is not going to have any shortage of touches this season. I say it on the show all the time. With wide receivers, you chase the targets. With running backs, you chase the touches. And for me, I love that they have a nice trio at wide receiver. I love Pat Freiermuth at tight end. I think he's going to be fantastic for dynasty purposes. And I'm bigger on Big Ben this year in 2021 than a lot of people are. And I know they lost David DeCastro, but they replaced him with Trey Turner, so they put a little bit of a Band-Aid on that. Look, this is not a bad football team. This team was 11-0 at a point last year, Addison. So I don't know where all the panic's coming from, to be quite honest with you. And this, I think they were ranked. Where were they ranked last year as a unit at running back? I think it was. They had the lowest yardage total in the NFL as a rushing attack. So that, to me, is all going to change this year with Najee Harris. I think workload alone is going to bring him into the top 10. I have him finishing as RB7 this season. And I don't hate that at all. I don't think that's an egregious take whatsoever. And for anybody mentioning the offensive line, what did James Robinson do as an undrafted rookie free agent last year behind a bad offensive line on a bad team and a bad offense? Workload alone, he was a top 7 running back. So, why can't Najee Harris do it, who's significantly more talented all the way around than James Robinson?
Okay, so we talked about your boy Kyle Pitts as an Atlanta Falcons fan. We're talking about Najee Harris here as a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. Oh, so this is fun, dude. I love Najee Harris for fantasy. I wasn't super happy with the pick at the time because I thought we had other needs. We didn't need to go for the running back, but this is the world that we're living in now. We got to go with it. And Najee Harris is going to be fantastic. 350 touches, like you said, I think is minimum, honestly, because we could be talking about a running back that we haven't had, by we, I mean the Pittsburgh Steelers, since Le'Veon Bell. Because Najee Harris can be that guy, and I don't care about the offensive line. Najee Harris is that good. He could be a 5 yards per carry type of running back, and also with 60, 70 receptions as well. The receptions is really going to be what elevates his game and opens up his ceiling for fantasy football. And I think that's all going to be there. They were 12th in the league in total points per game last year in scoring. I think that they're still going to be pretty good. I think people are kind of sleeping on the Pittsburgh Steelers because of their fall from 11-0 at the end of last year. That's the last thing that we remember about the Pittsburgh Steelers was, they had a really bad, November and December. They had a horrendous playoff game against the Cleveland Browns. And I think that's really what we remember, but we don't remember the fact that this offense is still uber productive for fantasy football. And if you combine and look at the stats from what James Conner and Benny Snell had last year, it was 1,200 rushing yards, another 10 total touchdowns, and about 400 or 500 receiving yards. Maybe we don't put all of that on Najee Harris, but if we give him 80% of that, we're talking about, a potential 1,400 total, yards type of a running back with another 8, 9, 10 touchdowns. Like I said, 60, 70 receptions. Like, how is he not an RB1 in fantasy this year? And so I absolutely love him for fantasy football.
Yeah. Okay. So you're right up there with me and Mike Tagley with tags on Najee, because we're like, draft him in the first round. I don't care. I want a piece of that. I told you around the beginning of the show, like I'm targeting 3 guys from the 10 to 12 range in redraft leagues. I want Zeke. I want 2 of Zeke, Najee, and Eckler. I want 2 of those 3 guys in any order going into the 3rd round. Like, that's what I want, and I've been able to do it almost everywhere, and I'm thrilled about it. And we're in total agreement. I'm not as concerned about the offensive line with a guy like this. He's even more athletic than James Robinson is. He's a better talent than James Robinson is, and James Robinson did it based on workload alone. James Robinson's not some, excellent athlete and some star football prospect. He just so happened to be the best running back left on the team after Fournette was gone. And is that really saying much? And I like James Robinson. He helped me win a lot of games last year. But at the end of the day, if we're comparing the two, Najee Harris has a much higher ceiling on a much better offense with a better quarterback and a better passing game, which is obviously going to open up running lanes for this team. So to me, I think the sky is the limit for Najee Harris. And, we talk about it almost every year. There is a running back that finishes as an RB1. And I think this year, more than anybody, it's going to be Najee Harris. I like Travis Etienne because of the ceiling with the receptions he's going to get. I even love Javonte Williams. I think Javonte Williams, it would not surprise me if he finishes higher than Travis Etienne this year and ends up being a better rookie running back in totality moving forward. But those are guys that have that ceiling, but they don't have the floor to me that a guy like Najee Harris has. So I think we're both buying the hype on Najee Harris there. And I think that for me, I'm taking him over a guy like Nick Chubb. I don't care what anybody says, because Najee Harris doesn't have Kareem Hunt to worry about, right? And so that to me is another thing that a lot of people forget about. And so Cam Akers is another thing. I think we won't get into Cam. I don't know what your feelings are about Cam Akers, but I'm out on Cam Akers because of the ADP. And if it's between Najee Harris and Cam Akers, please, it's Najee Harris all day long. And so there's guys in that range that I just want over Najee Harris, and it has a lot to do with the situation and the touches that he's going to be receiving. Yeah,
100%. We're in agreement.
Okay, so when we finished sort of the hype conversation here. So I've got a question. Our last topic here before we jump out. What if I told you, Addison, that there was a receiver, okay? Just one receiver. What if I told you there's a wide receiver who I think a lot of people are overvaluing and buying a little too much in for this year and maybe even a little more moving forward? There's a lot of question marks. His high-profile injured running back is coming back from injury. They added a couple more weapons at the receiver position. They added a physical freak pass-catching tight end who, again, has not broken out yet. Okay, but that's more due, I think, to the offenses he's played in rather than his talent alone. Okay, and his quarterback situation was less than ideal last year, and it arguably even got worse this year. And this wide receiver just doesn't catch touchdowns. If I told you that there was a wide receiver in that situation, what would you say to me? Would you be happy about this particular wide receiver based on that particular example that I just gave?
No, not particularly.
Okay, what if I told you that wide receiver is DJ Moore?
Yeah, I was trying to follow along with you on who that was. At first
I had to try to give some clues. I thought
you were going Kenny Golladay at first. That's
I'm
where I
not
was
crazy
after
about him
that.
either. I'm not crazy about him either, but
Then it was, hey, he doesn't catch touchdowns. And I was like, yikes. That's not Kenny Galladay. He catches touchdowns. DJ Moore. Yeah, dude. So I'll be honest with you. I am very surprised that DJ Moore, at least in terms of DLF ADP for Dynasty, this could be a lot of because of age and whatnot, but he's still a wide receiver 1 in Dynasty ADP. And I'd imagine he's probably around ish there for redraft. I'm not, do you know where he is for redraft?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and tell you that right now. Let's see, ADPs here. Give me just a second. And that does surprise me too, though. Are there really only 11 other wide receivers that we are going to take over DJ Moore in Dynasty? I don't think so. I mean, I'd like to go down a list and name off the number of wide receivers I would take in Dynasty over DJ Moore. Right now, DJ Moore's ADP. It looks like now I'm looking at 2 QB leagues or I'm like Superflex ADP, and it looks like he's going as like wide receiver 25 in redraft. And then let's see in 1 QB here, he is going as wide receiver 22. So it improves a little bit there for whatever reason.
That's not as bad as what I thought it was, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and this is of course high? This is per fantasy data. Well, I don't think it's high. I just think that moving forward, I think that a lot of people, regardless of ADP, I think that a lot of people are not looking at DJ Moore's situation and what he's having to deal with now. And I think they're just assuming, okay, he's going to catch a lot of footballs, target a lot, going to have, 1,000 yards. But we got to look at it. Are we really comfortable with him being our wide receiver 2? I don't know that I am. I would be comfortable with him as my wide receiver 3 on my team. Now, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get him, as my wide receiver 3 on my team, but I don't know that I want him as my wide receiver 2 based on exactly what I just explained.
I think he's a really good wide receiver 2 if you have a true alpha wide receiver 1. You're telling me that I can get Keenan Allen, Allen Robinson, Calvin Ridley, guys like that as my wide receiver 1. I'm comfortable with DJ Moore as my wide receiver 2 because a lot of people want to be like, well, if he just had some, positive touchdown regression, this dude's been like constantly every single year, 120, 130 plus targets, and he only has like 4 or 5 touchdowns. And I'm like, I don't necessarily think that's happening because he's not being targeted inside the red zone, not being targeted inside the 10 zone. A lot of his touchdowns are long, 40, 50, 60 yard touchdowns that he just breaks away and scores. And that's really where the source of his touchdowns come from. So I'm not really in on that a whole lot, but I do really like the fact that he's like an 80 reception guy, 1,200 yards. He's had back-to-back seasons of 1,200 plus yards. So I will give him that. I like that a lot. And the touchdowns, maybe he does with Sam Darnold ultimately just catch more touchdowns. I don't know. Maybe that just kind of happens like that one fluke year we had from Jarvis Landry in Miami, where he was like a double-digit touchdown catcher all of a sudden after being a 90 for 1,100 and like 5 type of guy for 4 years. Maybe that happens this year with Sam Darnold. I don't know. But I think I am comfortable with DJ Moore at his current price point. Like you said, is outside the top 20 at wide receiver. Who do you have names going around him? I'm curious on to where I ultimately would stand.
Yeah, and of course, every league's going to be different. There's going to be so you got to account for I like to typically account for like a 5 slot variant. So I like to account for 10 in total. So wherever he's at, wide receiver 22. We'll just stick with the wide receiver 22. So I like to either go 5 up, 5 down to account for that variance in different leagues and different opinions and different owners. So you're looking at a 5 up. Robert Woods is going ahead of him. Chris Godwin, Adam Thielen. I don't think it's even arguable that he should be ahead of him. Cooper Kupp, even with Matthew Stafford, that I think is a decent spot as well. Deontay Johnson, I those to me, that's kind of a coin flip. And then of course, right behind him is Kenny Galladay, Tyler Lockett, Jamar Chase, which I think is low. I'll take Jamar Chase 100 times out of 10 over DJ Moore. Probably Tyler Lockett as well. And then behind that, you've got Brandon Ayuk, Odell Beckham, T. Higgins. So that's kind of where those guys, are sort of going from an ADP standpoint. So there's some guys that I understand it. And we talked about Kenny Golladay. They're like a coin flip right now at 22 and 23 at wide receiver. I don't know which I'd probably rather have. I think if it's, I think PPR, I don't know. That one's tough. I do like that. I think Galladay's catches are going to be right around the same. I think DJ's yardage is going to be higher, but I think Kenny's touchdowns are going to be higher. And again, we talked about quarterback. How confident are you that Sam Darnold's even going to be just as good as Teddy Bridgewater? He might be worse. Like we're blaming this Sam Darnold thing not working out so far in his career on Adam Gase and the Jets and the offensive line and the weapons and all that. But what if it's Sam Darnold?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it really could be. That one of the biggest things I hate is when people say, well, Sam Darnold had Adam Gase. Now he doesn't have Adam Gase. Look what Ryan Tannehill did with and without Adam Gase, right? And I think that's super annoying because Sam Darnold was not Ryan Tannehill with the New York Jets. Ryan Tannehill was a back-to-back 4,000-yard passer with the Miami Dolphins with Adam Gase. And that is not like Sam Darnold was not good at all in any form whatsoever at the quarterback position. And so, yeah, I am not a Sam Darnold guy. I don't like him at all, really, for the quarterback, for fantasy. I think that he could do similar things to what Teddy Bridgewater did for DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson did really well in the New York Jets offense for like half of a season a couple years ago. So I do think that there is upside there, and there's upside in the unknown that we don't know if it was Darnold or not. It could be, it might not be. I think DJ Moore is adequately priced on where you had him right there. Behind, I would 100% take him behind Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, Chris Godwin. I would 100% take him above Tyler Lockett, Odell Beckham Jr., T. Higgins, guys like them. So I think he's pretty adequately priced right there. I don't know. You could ask me again tomorrow who I would take between Kenny Golladay and DJ Moore. That one's super tough. But yeah, I don't know. They are, like you said, in similar quarterback situations, yardage goes to Moore, touchdowns goes to Golladay. And I think at the end of the day, I think he's pretty adequately priced. I think that he's solid. He's just solid. I'll give him that, solid.
Yeah, and look, I think he's got a high floor, and I think obviously what you're getting into bed with when you take DJ Moore, and that's fine. I'm fine targeting DJ Moore, and I love the prospect. I love the player. He's athletic. I get it. Now, I do believe, and Mark and I talked about this on the show the other day. I do believe that they need to start using DJ Moore in a different role, in the role that he can excel in as the yak guy. That's what he is. Let him utilize him as the guy that can run these shorter to intermediate routes and create and make things happen with the ball in his hands. Like, give him the ability, maximize the ability, I should say, to get those yak yards, because that is why DJ Moore excelled at Maryland with arguably the worst offense in the entire country when it came to D1 schools. So, and it's a terrible situation there at Maryland as well. So, look, I don't hate where DJ Moore's going, but I just feel like if people are expecting DJ Moore, Sam Darnold to come in here, and I love Joe Brady, don't get me wrong, I love Joe Brady, but even as Joe Brady as play caller, OC, what have you, in this Matt Rule offense, I think you add Dan Arnold. That's just another body in the room to compete with targets, and I get it. Dan Arnold's not a breakout tight end, but I think that has more to do with the fact that he played in Cliff Kingsbury's system and Bruce Arians' system. They don't really utilize tight end a whole lot. He is not a blocker. He is what we were talking about with Kyle Pitts and Evan Ingram and guys like and Jimmy Grant. He is going to be playing. He's going to be running routes, and the more guys that DJ Moore is having to worry about running routes with, the worse I think it is for him. And I think maybe his target total goes down. Robbie Anderson's not going anywhere this year. And even when he does, Terrace Marshall is going to be he's going to become more of a volume receiver as well. And I think he is going to be the future alpha of that team, because I think he's the most talented receiver on that team in totality. But there's just a lot. And of course, Christian McCaffrey coming back, that's going to,
that doesn't help.
Yeah, that's not going to help from a receiving standpoint either. So I like DJ Moore. There's a lot to like there, but if you're telling me that Deshaun Watson's coming in to be the quarterback, I'm sold. Okay, if you're telling me that Aaron Rodgers is coming in to be the quarterback, I'm sold. But when it's Sam Darnold, how confident am I that he's going to do better than even what Teddy Bridgewater did? And even if he does, how much better? That's another question. So for me, this entire offense, I'm a little skeptical on, of course, outside of Christian McCaffrey in 2021. I think obviously McCaffrey is going to be right back to his sort of RB1 area there. So, but look, like I said, I don't hate where DJ Moore's going. I just think that a lot of people need to be cautious with expectations.
Yeah. Yep. I do agree that he needs to be utilized differently. It was really weird. If you look at his stat lines, he was like a 4 for 90 type of wide receiver last year, which I don't really understand why they were using him that way. He does need to be more of a Deontay Johnson, get targeted 10 times a game and catch 7 balls and over the middle and let him do his thing. And maybe he scores a touchdown and breaks one off. If he can do that with Sam Darnold, I like it a lot. Basically like what Robert Woods does or what Cooper Kupp does in Sean McVay's offense, no matter with Jared Goff or with Matthew Stafford. If he can be utilized that way, he will be a lot better for fantasy football, I think. And then the touchdowns can just be whatever they are.
Yeah, and look, you don't need to score a lot of touchdowns. I mean, we've seen it with Julio. Like, you don't have to score a lot of touchdowns to be an elite fantasy receiver. You can get those catches and those yards, which is what Julio lived off of in Atlanta. But, if we're expecting DJ Moore to do, I think we're going to need a better quarterback, number one. And I just don't know if that's going to be in the cards for a guy like DJ Moore anytime soon. So that's why I have to, and in the future, I mentioned this to Mark as well a couple episodes ago, is we agreed Sam Darnold's probably not going to work out. So they're going to be drafting a rookie quarterback. So now you're going into season 4 or 5, and with a guy who I feel there's more question marks than answers when it comes to like scoring touchdowns. And is he ever going to be that 1,500 yard guy? And so now you got a rookie quarterback that needs to learn the system and have chemistry with you, and he's got to learn. So, it might affect DJ. And so it's, to me, moving forward, it's also a little dicey in Dynasty, but that's what the guys over at Dynasty League Football are going to figure out. Addison Hayes being one of those guys. Addison, dude, it's been awesome. I can't wait to get you on again. Next time we'll make sure that we can make it a 3-man party and have 3 mics and have my partner Mark on here as well. So Addison, has been great, man. It's been awesome. Again, guys, check out Addison Hayes' work. DynastyLeagueFootball.com, Dynasty League Football YouTube channel. Addison, again, tell them a little bit more about Dynasty League Football and what they can expect in the coming weeks and months during the season.
Yeah, DynastyLeagueFootball.com. You can become a member, get access to a whole bunch of daily content from the amazing DLF team. And it's just, like the number one source for Dynasty fantasy football content. So if you're into that kind of stuff, definitely you need to have DLF on your radar and in your, quick to go favorites on your browser, and check us out there. And then obviously, the YouTube channel. The YouTube channel is 100% free. We drop content Monday through Friday between the DLF podcast, my videos. We got some other great guys from the DLF team doing some work as well, trades and buy sells and all that good stuff from a Dynasty perspective. So you can go check that out on the DLF YouTube channel as well. And I think that's basically it. Thank you so much for asking me to come on here, Chris. This was a blast, and I do hope that Mark can join us next time, because I would love to chop it up with him as well. But this was super fun, and thank you so much for asking me to come on here.
Absolutely, man. It's been a blast. And the guys also, in addition to checking out Dynasty League Football and all that Addison Hayes and his team have to offer, also check out the Roto Bros Fantasy Advice Lounge, patreon.com/Roto Bros. You can join that as well. We got a lot going on, and it gets nuts during the season. We've got more subscribers than ever, so that's just going to be a huge party. We've got channels for DFS, season long, best ball, you name it, we cover it. So check that out. Again, patreon.com/Roto Bros for the Roto Bros Fantasy Advice Lounge on Discord. Addison, thanks again. Kyle Pitts to the moon, baby.
Thanks for listening.
And don't forget to join the Roto Bros Fantasy Advice Lounge on Discord by going to patreon.com/RotoBros. Signal lost.